All right, good afternoon. Welcome. I'm Bill Collins, the owner of the school. We're doing a class on preparing for your permit. I'm streaming this class, so I had to get that going so people can watch remotely here. First off, do you all have a handout? Okay. Are you sticking around? Okay. Do you have one of these? Nope. Okay, let me give you one of these. Okay. So let me get that handout on the screen here. Okay. So first thing I'm going to do is go through the mechanics of how to get a permit. Okay. And then what we're going to do, this is a 90-minute session. We'll spend about an hour going studying for the test and showing you how to study for it. But first of all, the basics. To get a permit, first of all, is everybody a Minnesota resident? Any Wisconsin residents? Okay. All right. Everybody's Minnesota. All right. You have to have a Class D license. That's obvious. You have to have a regular car license. But then to get your permit, you're going to need either a passport or a certified birth certificate. Now, what's a certified birth certificate? What makes it certified? Any idea? Yeah, but how can you tell it's a certified one?
Stamp.
Yeah, it's got like a raised stamp seal type thing on it, okay? So the point is a photocopy of a birth certificate doesn't cut it for these guys. It's got to be a certified copy of your birth certificate. So if you have that, bring that with. If you don't, a passport. If you don't have either of those, you're going to have to go get a certified birth certificate. You can get them online with most counties. If you need any assistance with that process, my staff in the office here can help you with it. But you need a certified birth certificate or a passport in order to get the permit. Now, you can take the knowledge tests without having the certified birth certificate, but you can't get the permit without it. To get the permit, you need to study the manuals, Minnesota or Wisconsin. All of the correct answers come out of the manual. There's a federal rule in play that says anything on a test has to be in the manual. And we track the state of Minnesota very carefully to make sure that they're not deviating from that rule. So the correct answers are in the manual. And don't assume that you can do this with common sense. That's not the way to come up with the correct answer, all right? Case in point, one of my instructors that works for us, he just stuck his head in around the corner here a second ago, Mark used to be a state highway patrol, Minnesota State Highway Patrol commercial vehicle inspector. So he worked for the troopers, and his job was to drive around, inspect trucks, and make truck drivers' lives miserable, okay? And he was a hazmat specialist with the highway patrol. So that meant anytime there was a incident involving a commercial motor vehicle with hazardous materials around the metro area, Mark could get called out on it. Well, he also had a CDL. He's had a CDL for years. And he decided he wanted to get his hazmat endorsement on the CDL. So figuring, well, he's a hazmat specialist. He doesn't need to study the manual. So guess what happened when he went and took the knowledge test?
Failed.
He failed it, okay? You got to know what the manual says. There are things in the manual that are so impractical or unrealistic or not applicable to the real world of driving truck, including the hazmat stuff. The correct answer comes out of the manual. So you need to study the manual to do that. The sections of the manual that you study, you can see on my handout here. How many of you doing Class A? How many of you doing Class B? Okay. You guys don't know what you're doing?
No, we don't know.
Okay. What kind of work are you looking to do, or what's your plan?
Kind of just see what all this involves. And
Okay. All right. Well, and just for the get-go, a Class A test is more difficult, especially the driving part of it. It takes more skill to pass a Class A test than a Class B. Class A jobs are going to pay better, but they're typically more work. The higher paying jobs are pretty long hours. Um, so there's a wide variety of opportunities out there depending upon what you're looking to do. All right, so for a Class A permit, you want to study sections 1, 2, 3, 5, and 6. For a Class B permit, you want to study sections 1, 2, 3, and 5. Now we call these knowledge tests. They can be done on a computer or paper. I'll get to that here in a minute. The general knowledge that is applicable to any grade of commercial permit, that general knowledge test is 50 questions. You have to get 80% correct. The air brake test, which would be required for 95% of the Class B trucks and 100% of the, well, not 100%, 98% of the Class A trucks, I guess. The air brakes test is 30 questions, and then combinations that you need for Class A is 20 questions. So if you're going to do a Class A, you take 3 knowledge tests: general knowledge, air brakes, and combinations. And between the 3, you're looking at 100 questions. If you're doing Class B, you take general knowledge and air brakes. That's 80 questions. Okay. So study the respective sections to prepare for those knowledge tests. All right. Next thing on my handout here, you see that I've got cdltest.co as a practice test website. It is by far the most accurate practice website that you can use. I think this one here is just cheese. There are a lot of different websites out there, okay? And I would highly recommend that you don't use any one of them except for cdltest.co. These other test websites are not reflective of the Minnesota permit test. I've had a lot of complaints over the years of people saying, I don't understand. I go on these practice websites and I practice and then I fail the thing. I don't understand why I'm failing it. Well, the reason they're failing it is that the website they're going to doesn't have accurate questions. We discovered cdltest.co well, probably 6 months ago or something, and it is the most accurate practice website you can go to. Now, to get to that, you can go through our website. We have put it on our website. So if you go to interstatedriving.com and then just go to the resources, click on resources, and the third one down is practice permit test, and that is cdltest.co. Right? And we're going to go use that here a little bit later. Right? And lest I forget, I strongly suggest that you do not watch YouTube videos on permit test or road test unless it's a Minnesota-based video. Now, students that go through us, I forgot, is it Gary, Mike, what's your first name? Jim. So our students, we send them links to videos. So you've got links to videos that we have, okay? But for everybody, if you go look at videos from other states, you are going to confuse yourself. You're going to mess yourself up, okay, with both the permit test and the road test. If it's a Minnesota-based YouTube video, then even if it's a competitor of ours, I would suggest that's okay. Just don't listen to anything from any other state, okay? There's a lot of different ways to do this, and some of the videos are so old, the testing process has changed significantly over the years. So make sure you're looking at a Minnesota-based video. Now, the Minnesota manual is available online. MinDriveInfo.org is where you access that. So let's show you how that works. Here's their main website. You scroll down here where it says documents. Don't click on that first driver's manual because that's the regular car manual. You want to go to more documents, click on that, and then you'll see commercial driver's license manual. Open that sucker up and there you are. Now, this way you for certain are using the latest and most accurate manual. And then there's something about the way they have this online manual structured that I really like. You can find key words in this thing real easily with a find box. Just hit Control F to open up a find box. And then we can type in anything, all right? So let's type in low beam. And what it's going to do is it's going to take me to every place in the manual, and apparently there's 8 places in the manual that low beam is mentioned, okay? Now, it doesn't take me to the word low or the word beam. It takes me only to low beam, okay? So I like that because the typical search engines, you type a phrase in, and it'll take you every variation of it. So I really like the way they've got this structured. And this is very helpful to me to be able to answer or find information in here. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I'll have read something and I go, wait a minute, now, what was that? I just read that a few minutes ago. Where is it? Now I'm on this search trying to figure out where it is, this thing that I'm looking for is. And this just helps me find things so quickly. So I really like that, okay? Go to section. You have to spell properly, though, when you do this. That's the only kicker of it. Come on, you can do it. All right, so now something else I want to show you. If we go back to my little handout here, item number 6, manual is also available as an audio file, okay? Let's go back to the website here. So instead of clicking on the manual itself, if I scroll down, you'll see that the commercial manual, also the regular car manual and the motorcycle manual also, but they have it available as an audio file, right? Now, on the screen here, I've got section 10, so let me click on section 10 of the audio file and watch and listen here for a minute.
Material on page 10-1 omitted. Continuing with the text. Section 10, Pre-Trip Vehicle Inspection Test. This section covers internal inspection, external inspection. During the pre-trip inspection, you must show that the vehicle is safe to drive. You will have to walk around the vehicle and point to or touch each item and explain to the examiner what you are checking and why.
Okay, so get the point. This thing reads you the manual, okay? Now, I mentioned to you that you need to study sections 1, 2, 3, 5, and 6 for Class A. Section 6 is 43 minutes long. Section 5,
Section 5,
42 minutes long. So what do we got? We got about an hour and a half there so far, right? Just want to check something real quick. Section 3.
Section 3.
That's only 13 minutes, and now we're up to about 2 hours. Section 1.
Model.
40 minutes. Now we're about 2 hours and 40 minutes. Section 2.
Section 2. Driving safely.
Okay. Yeah, 3 hours and 15 minutes. And we already got 2 hours and 40 minutes invested. How long is this going to take you to get through this stuff? In excess of 6 hours, y'all. Okay. What do you suppose happens when people start reading through this thing? And they get overwhelmed. They get to about, it's different for everybody, but I'd say somewhere between 20 and 30 minutes or maybe an hour and 10 minutes. But somewhere in there, people are like, and they put the thing down, okay? Now, that's why people are failing the permit test, right? Now, there's 2 ways to pass these permit tests, okay? One way is to prepare for it, study it, and I'll show you how to study for this thing. I'll show you what you need to study. The other way is go take it about 6 times. Because you'll figure it out that way too, won't you? Just keep taking it until you pass it, okay? And I'm telling you, there's people that do that, and that's why the state will start charging you after the first 2 attempts. The first 2 attempts of these knowledge tests are free, but after that they start charging you $10. And it's almost like they're saying, you know, you didn't study the dang thing, so we're going to start charging you. We ain't going to make it free because you're too dang lazy to study the test. People, if you study the manual, you'll pass this thing. I'm telling you. And I'll show you that here as we go along. Okay. Now, the audio file can be a very powerful learning tool, especially if you have any difficulty retaining information from reading it. I believe very strongly in audio files. We use them a lot. So you two guys that are in the program, you've already gotten audio files from us, right? Right? So we use these audio files here along with our curriculum and part of the tools we use because I'm just so convinced in how powerful they are. As an example of what I'm talking about, finish the following sentence for me, please. You ready? Send big money out. Who didn't know that? You all knew that, right? Now, did you try to memorize that? Did you intend to memorize that? Did you set out to memorize that? But you knew it, didn't you? And how'd you know it? Because you've heard it hundreds of times, okay? I am suggesting that you listen to these audio files repeatedly, okay? Create an opportunity for you to do that. Maybe put it on a IP player, you know, some sort of player of some sort so you can listen to it in your car. Maybe listen to it at the end of the day. Maybe listen to it first thing in the morning. Maybe listen to it at lunch, okay? My wife could ace any of these tests. And the reason I say that is that my wife is a theater major and she knows how to study. But I tell you what, when she does a production and she comes home from a script, if she's reading her script and I walk in the room, what kind of response do I get? Nothing. And if I ask her a question, what kind of response do I get? Okay? I mean, that lady is focused. And she never misses her lines. She is awesome up on a stage because she knows her lines so well, right? But she takes the time and makes the effort to make that happen, okay? So here's a tool for you that I think is a very powerful and effective tool. All you need is the internet. You can get to it off your phone. You can go right from your smartphone to this thing and play it. Put on your Bluetooth so you can play it in the car real easily, or ear fobs, speakerphone, whatever. So I'm strongly suggesting that you use that audio file. All right, back to my handout. Blow this up so we can read it a little better. All right, 1 permit test on any one subject allowed per day. As I just mentioned, your first and second attempt at a subject is free. If you fail 2 tests, they start charging you $10 after that for each. If you fail a test at one exam station in the morning, don't get in your car, drive someplace to another exam station because they have you in the system. So they'll catch you on that. The next statement here on my handout, the test is available on paper or with a computer. The major exam stations will require you to take your first test on the computer. That's a policy they have. Now, some people like the computers because the computers have headphones you can listen to. So if you like that feature, well, then you want the computer. Personally, I like the paper version. Here's what, you hate the audio?
I took it yesterday.
Yeah.
And they, like, I had all my permits and stuff. And I had to take it again because it expires in 6 months.
Yep.
And I failed my road test at Egan a week ago, so I have to take everything all over again.
Yeah. Sucks.
And at the road test, she failed. She was out of the book. Like, the place I work is Republic Services.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, after I got my permit, this was nothing. Like, I mean, like, once I got there, I said, I did my air brake test.
Yeah.
And said, this is going to pop at 30 PSI. And she's like, you're wrong. It's between 20 and 40. And I was like, so 30. She's like, technically true, but in the book it says between 20 and 40. So she failed me on basically terminology.
Yep. Yep, you did. And
Yeah.
welcome to the state of Minnesota. Okay? There is so much about this testing process in the state of Minnesota that is unfair. And unless I win the lottery so I can afford to sue these guys, there's nothing we can do about it. Right? I mean, the things they do are criminal. And part of it is the amount of time it takes you to get in for a test.
Yep.
Right? And the way they score things, and you're absolutely right,
Yep.
is that it's supposed to pop between 20 and 40. So if it pops at 30, you're within
Yep.
the parameters. But what you have to say is you have to say two things to them. It's supposed to pop between 20 and 40, and yes, it popped at 30.
Yep.
So if you only say half that, then you don't get the points,
Exactly.
which is insane. Okay.
Are we live on YouTube?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. We are live. Did you check it, Josh?
Just about.
Okay. All right. So back to the knowledge test, because don't get me going about the road test, because we'll be here all night. This is another part of this thing that's so unfair. All right. I like the paper version of the knowledge test. And here's why I like the paper version. Two reasons. First of all, I get to skip questions. The computer doesn't let you do that. And the big reason I like to skip questions is I can't tell you how many times I forget something and then I remember it a couple minutes later. I do it all the time. With the computer, you're stuck. You can't go on. The thing just sits there and waits for you to answer the question. Part of what's crazy about this is in Wisconsin, their computer system does allow you to skip questions. Minnesota doesn't. Minnesota does every single thing they possibly can to make this test as difficult as possible, beyond any reason, okay? And I'm broadcasting this live on YouTube, so if anybody from downtown is listening, you guys, you need to be fired, okay? I mean, we need some new blood down there. Why they make this test so difficult is there's no basis for it. There's no logic to it, right? Why can't you skip a question and come back to it? Now, on paper, you can, right? So get this. They have a policy that says your first visit, you have to take it on the computer.
That's what I did yesterday.
Okay. Now, well, wait a second. There are exam stations. There's 92 exam stations in the state of Minnesota. Not all of them have the computers. The exam stations that don't have the computers are the smaller ones that are only open one day a week. There are some exam stations around Minnesota that only open 2 days a month. Well, they don't have computers. So if you were to go to one of those places, Red Wing being one of them, guess how you take the test? Piece of paper, okay? So if one person can go to Red Wing and take it on paper, why can't you take it on paper and Egan? So those of you who are going in for your first test, if you want to take this thing on paper, the other reason I like the paper one, by the way, the computer scores you every time you get something wrong. And the way my little brain works, when I get something wrong, then I start focusing too much on that. I mean, oh, geez, that's one. Oh, criminy, that's two. And now I get kind of stressed out because I'm aware of what I'm doing wrong. So I'm better off if I don't know. Well, the paper one, obviously nobody's correcting it at that moment, so you don't know if you're getting it right or wrong. So for me, that's less stressful. Screen is crashing here. Is that one going on and off? My screen is going on and off. That's what I'm doing. So I like the paper version. Now, I have had customers who have gone to the Egan exam station where they have this policy that says you're supposed to do it on the computer first, and they have very politely but very firmly and respectfully insisted on the paper one first. Because think about that. There is this thing called the Constitution, right? Anybody ever heard of that? It's out in Washington, D.C. And there's this Bill of Rights thing. And in there it says something about all men. They figured out that women should be included after about 150 years. But all men should be treated equal under the law. Okay? So if one person can go to Red Wing and take this on paper, somebody else going to Egan needs to be able to take it on paper too. If we're going to follow the Constitution. So if you really want to take it on paper and you wanted to do it in Egan, then I'd simply ask for a supervisor. I'd be very polite, be very professional, very courteous. And I'd say, look, the Constitution requires you to treat me equally under the law. I demand to be treated equally under the law. If Joe Schmo can go to Red Wing and take it on paper, then I get to take it on paper here. You don't get to do that. So paper, please. Right? And again, I know people that have been able to accomplish that. So you just have to be polite. If you get hissy with them, they'll throw you out. And they can do that. Right? They can trespass you or I. Right?
No,
So-
the written one is so much better too.
I think.
You told me that I was here 6 months ago. You
Okay.
said take the written. I took the written. I passed it like right away. And now I think they changed it up with the computer test too, because they stopped me at 35 out of 50. I didn't
On the
complete
computer.
my test because it's a fail.
Right.
So they changed that now because I remember last time when I took it on computer they didn't stop me after.
Oh, really?
So many, so that kind of stuff.
Okay. So there you go. You can take it on paper or on a computer. Make sure you get there early enough in the day so that you've got enough time to complete it. Again, a Class A test is 100 questions. That's going to take you more than an hour to do. If the exam station closes at 4:30, I'd suggest you need to be there by about 2:30 to do all of that. The exam station locations are listed on mindriveinfo.org. Next sentence here on my handout, you can take you can take just one subject at a time if that works best for you. The exam station will hold on to your scores until you come back at a later date to pass the other test. Now, if you do that, if you go in, let's say for the sake of discussion, you go in and you take all 3 tests and you pass but one of them and you fail the other 2. Fine, they'll keep your record, you leave, come back the next day and take them 2 that you haven't passed yet, all right? Now, hopefully, they still have a record of the one you passed. Me, I'm not walking out of the building without some sort of document that proves I passed anything. I'm not going to trust them. So if they don't give me a copy of it, I'm going to take a picture of it. I'm not walking out of that building without a document that proves that I done passed that thing. It has happened to people where they come back. I was here yesterday. I passed general knowledge. I'm here to take the rest of it. Oh, well, we can't find that one from yesterday. Well, I was here and I passed it. Oh, well, then you should have no trouble passing it again. I mean, that's their attitude. Okay? Everything that you do, every interaction you have with the state of Minnesota Department of Public Safety, double check it. Make sure everything's correct. The mistakes they make are constant. We've had people go in, take a Class B test, get a Class A license, and vice versa. We've had people go in and get a permit and get a license in the mail. But what's really hurtful to people, we've had several people over the years take their road test, get their license in the mail, and on the back of the license it says that they can't drive a vehicle with air brakes. And their written test had air brakes, their road test had air brakes. They're 100% legit, but somebody made a keystroke mistake, and they've got a restriction. We even had one guy who had been driving for a year and a half and got pulled over in a normal inspection. The trooper looks at his license and goes, "Son, you can't drive this truck." "What? You can't drive this truck?" "What are you talking about, officer? I've been driving for a year and a half." "Well, you've been driving illegal for a year and a half then, because it says right here, no air brakes." He didn't look at his own license. He didn't realize he had that restriction on it. Right? So pay attention to this stuff. Here's another example of how these guys have messed up. We had a student last year. First week of June, he took a road test, failed the driving. He passed the pre-trip inspection, but he failed the driving. So he comes back on June 21st last year to take the driving test. He passes it. And he gets done with the test, and the examiner says, "Congratulations, you passed. Here's what you did wrong, so here's how you need to improve. Here's your paperwork. You can go inside and get your license." And this young man says, "Well, I don't have my birth certificate with me, so I was going to go to Chaska tomorrow because I live out that way." And the examiner says, "That's fine. Just take all this paperwork. You'll be good. Congratulations." So off he goes. Goes to Chaska the next day, pays his $38.50, gets a piece of paper that says he's got a temporary Class A license. Towards the end of July, he gets a letter in the mail from the state. "There's no record of your road test. You must take a road test in order to apply for a Class A license." This guy's like, "What?" So he goes to Chaska and he shows them the letter, and they're like, "Well, there's nothing on the computer, so yeah, you got to take a road test. Dude, I took a road test at Egan. Well, I'll go back to Egan. Their problem, I guess. So he drives to Egan. Same thing. They look him up in the computer. Nope, no record of your road test. Dude, I was here June 21st at 12:30 in the afternoon. We have no record of it. So he comes here and he asks us, do you have any record of it? Well, here's the thing. We have video cameras in our trucks. And we're the only truck driving school, certainly in the state of Minnesota, to my knowledge, we're the only truck driving school in the United States that has dash cameras in the trucks during the road test. And the only reason we've got that is because I filed a lawsuit against the state of Minnesota and won. I got a judge to say, yep, you get to do that. So we have this on videotape, this conversation I was just telling you about. Congratulations, you passed your test. Thank you very much. You can go inside and get your license. I don't have my birth certificate with me. I'm going to Chaska. That's fine. That whole conversation is on video, right? So he comes here and he goes, do you guys have any documents that I took the test? Well, we got it better. We got it on video. So I put that, Pat, our scheduler, found the video within just a couple minutes. Didn't take long. And we played it on a monitor, and then I had him videotape it, right? So he goes out to Egan with this videotape on his phone and says, hey, I got it on videotape. And they're like, well, no, it's Chaska's mistake. Go to Chaska. He goes to Chaska. Hey, I got it on video. And Chaska's like, dude, it's Egan's mistake. Go back to Egan. He goes back to Egan. He's there for the third time in the same day. Right? This guy's been running around all day long trying to get this thing squared away. And they stonewall him for the third time and tell him, nope, you got to take a road test. I don't care about your video. And so he calls us from there. He was actually talking to Pat, but I was standing next to Pat, and I told Pat, all right, tell this young man to tell the supervisor out there to expect a call from my attorney because we're not putting up with this, okay? I'm going to call my lawyer right now. And this young man calls back about 10 minutes later. Don't worry about it. They just called me and said it's okay. They've taken care of it. My point is I had to threaten them with getting a lawyer involved. Are you kidding me? They wouldn't accept a video of one of their staff members saying, congratulations, you passed the test? That's not good enough for them to accept that he took a road test and passed it? Come on, you got to be kidding me. Well, that's their attitude down there, all right? Check everything. Don't trust these people, right? Do not trust the state of Minnesota. They don't have your best interest at heart here, all right? All right. I'll get off that soapbox and get on to another one. All right, last sentence here. You need to complete a CDL medical self-certification form when you get your permit. All right. This is real interesting here, all right? Flip to the last page in the handout I've given you. Let me get this on the screen for people that are watching via the internet. This is called a commercial driver's license medical self-certification form, all right? You must fill out, sign, and submit this document when you get a permit. You'll have to do it again when you get your license. Now, there's 4 categories, and you got to pick one of those 4 categories. Category 1 and 2 are for driving interstate, using when you are driving within the definition of interstate commerce. Category 3 and 4, intrastate commerce. Now, first off, interstate commerce is a huge, broad definition. As an example, Midwest Fence, my landlord here, if they put chain link fence on one of their 1-ton trucks and drive over to West St. Paul to install it, that's interstate commerce. Why? That chain link fence came from Ohio. And all they're doing is continuing its trip. Even though Midwest Fence is not leaving the state of Minnesota, they're still involved in interstate commerce, all right? So if what you've got on your vehicle either came from or is going to another state, it is interstate commerce. Intrastate means staying within the state itself. That's a very, very narrow definition, but an example would be hauling gravel. You dug it up out of the ground here in Minnesota and you dropped it on the ground here in Minnesota. Then you're intrastate commerce. It's even hard to argue with garbage disposal because the garbage might be going someplace else. If the garbage is going to an incinerator here in the state of Minnesota and that's the only place you haul garbage, well, then maybe that garbage guy is intrastate, all right? So it's a very narrow definition. All right, now why would somebody choose intrastate versus interstate? Two reasons. First of all, if you're under age 21, how old are you?
21.
Okay, so you're good, okay? But under age 21, 18, 19, and 20, you can't drive interstate. So that would be an intrastate driver. Second reason, if you have a medical condition that doesn't allow you to drive interstate, and examples of that include loss of vision in one eye. You can't drive interstate unless you have 3 years previous experience and apply for a waiver. But you can get a waiver without previous experience and drive intrastate within the state of Minnesota. Another example, insulin-dependent diabetic. You can get a waiver. It's possible to get a waiver for insulin-dependent diabetic on the interstate level, but it's a big, long process. It takes a lot of time. Much easier to get one for intrastate. Much quicker and easier, right? So there is a different threshold for the medical level that you have to be able to jump over to pass a medical and get a DOT health card for between interstate and intrastate. So that's why somebody might gravitate towards the intrastate process. So presuming that those of you that are here are over 21 and don't have any health issues, then you're all interstate. Now you have two choices within interstate or intrastate, and that is non-exempt or exempt. I wish they would use the opposite phraseology. Category 1, non-exempt. I wish Category 1 was labeled required, because that's what number 1 is. A DOT health card is required for Category 1. Category 2, not required. Exempt. Exempt means it's not required, right? And non-exempt means it is required. Well, why not just say required and not required? I think that that would be clearer. Why they choose to make it difficult, I don't know, but that's the deal. So you have to be one of those two to get a permit, and it's real simple. It's either required or it's not. So who is required to have a DOT health card? Answer, anybody that's getting paid by a private company to drive a commercial motor vehicle is required to have a health card. There are some exceptions to that, but that's the simple definition. If you are not getting paid to drive a commercial motor vehicle, you do not need a medical health card. If you're in the initial stages of this process of getting your license and getting a job down the road, but you don't have a job yet, you don't need a medical card to get the permit. Some of the people in the state of Minnesota don't really understand that, and they're going to come across like you got to have the health card. No, you don't. You can get the permit without the health card. You can get a license without a health card. And there are situations where people don't need a health card. As an example, let's say, for the sake of discussion, that I win the lottery tomorrow night. If that happens on Thursday morning, my wife is going to expect me to purchase a hobby farm with horses. Okay? And she's going to want a trailer big enough to haul 4, 5, 6 horses so she and her friends can go off and ride horses on these different trails around. So I'm going to go over to Allstate Peterbilt here and buy a nice shiny automatic transmission truck, go get a nice aluminum Featherlight horse trailer, but that combination will be a Class A vehicle. The trailer will be over 10,000 pounds. The combination of the two vehicles will be over 26,000. So she will need to come here to get her Class A license. But because she's not doing anything commercial, she doesn't need a health card. Now, she can't charge 1 penny for any use of that truck and trailer. So when she goes on a trail ride with her friends, she can't charge her friends gas money. She can't sell her friends hay. She can't do anything with that truck and make any money on it. It's got to be purely personal expense. When that's the case, she doesn't need a health card. She also doesn't need to follow hours of service regulations, also doesn't need to have a vehicle inspected, yada, 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 down the road. All right? So that's who fits into an exempt status, an example of who fits into an exempt status. Until you're getting paid, you don't need the physical. So when you go get your permit, you have to fill this form out, sign it, and give it to them. Check Category 2, you're exempt. When you go to get your license, if you don't have a health card yet, check exempt, no problem. Now, once you get the physical, once you actually do go through that process, first of all, you got to go to a registered medical provider. I don't like calling them medical examiners because that sounds kind of bad. But a person that can do physical exams, you have to go to somebody that's registered with the feds to do that. And this is something that changed about 2.5 years ago. Up to 2.5 years ago, all we had to do was carry a card in our wallet that was filled out, signed, and in our wallet. During that period of time, the truck stops sold blank ones for $4. How hard was it to have a health card in your wallet? All you needed was $4 and a friend with lousy penmanship, and now you got a health card, right? Well, the feds figured out that that was being fraudulently done, so they created the system. So now you got to go to one of these people that are on the National Registry. When you take a physical from them, they put your name in a federal database, and then you have to send in, you have to submit that health card to the state of Minnesota. And if you see that, that's in parentheses underneath the two non-exempt statuses there. It says in parentheses, current medical examiner certificate from a certified medical examiner must be submitted. All right. Now, what they're going to do is they're going to put you into their database under your driver's license. And the thing about a medical is that it's going to have an expiration date. If you're in perfect health, it'll be 2 years down the road. If you have any health issues, 1 year. An example is if you're taking high blood pressure medication. Taking meds for high blood pressure, they give you a 1-year medical, right? Then that goes in to your onto your computer record. Let me show you mine here real quick. So since I'm going to show people at home this before I do that, I'm going to do that. Okay. So now they can see it at home. So this is what the screen looks like that tells us, oh, that didn't work out so well, did it? Okay. What the heck's going on here? There we go. Weird. So here's the deal. I have a Class A license. My Class D is valid. My commercial is valid. Here's my endorsements. I have motorcycle, double, triple tanker, and passenger. I have no restrictions. Now, my CDL self-certification, I am non-exempt Interstate. I am certified right now. And my medical card expires 6/5/19. If you learn anything from your time here at Interstate Truck Driving School, December 12, 2017, learn this. 60 days before that medical card expires, the state of Minnesota is going to send you a letter. I kept the last one I got from them. Here's what the letter says. This letter is furnished as a courtesy to you by Driver and Vehicle Services. Your medical examiner certificate will expire on the date, okay? And then it says, if you wish to maintain your commercial driving privilege, please submit the following documents. What this form should say is, dude, your medical is going to expire. If you don't fill out a new one, you'll lose your license, because that's what happens. If you don't resubmit this form that we were just looking at here a second ago, where did I put it? If you don't resubmit that form by the expiration date of your medical, they take your CDL away. Now, if you reinstate it within 365 days, they'll give it back to you. But guess what happens if you don't get back till 366 days?
Lose your job.
They take your license away from you such that you have to go through the whole process all over again. You got to go get a permit and then keep it for 14 days. Do you know that? You can't test for 14 days after you renew your permit, get a new permit. So, I mean, think of how unfair that is. You've had a permit for 6 months, right?
Yep.
And all of a sudden, you got to get a new permit and then wait 14 days before you're allowed to test. Well, you've already had the permit for 6 months. Why do you got to wait 14 days? I don't know, but it's their rule. Okay? And then you can take a road test and get your CDL back. There are people out there working for a living that are getting caught up in that. The letter got misplaced, or the biggest problem is people will get the letter and they go, oh, my medical is going to expire. Oh, okay. So they go renew their medical, but they don't submit the form. And that doesn't cut it. So, and these guys will get pulled over by the troopers. And license, insurance, registration. Don't you want my medical card? No, don't need it. Oh, okay. And the trooper comes back, oh, here's a ticket for not having your medical on file. Well, I got the card right here. Don't matter. What do you mean it don't matter? I got it right here. Don't matter. Okay. Officer, I've got a medical that's valid right here. That don't matter. You ain't in the system, dude. That's a ticket. So carrying it in your wallet doesn't cut it anymore. It's got to be on file with the state in their system. All right? So keep that in mind and stay on top of that. Once you get a medical, and now let's one more thing. Let's say, for the sake of discussion, that that you get a medical, you certify it, so you got that going, and then it expires 2 years from now, and so you make. But at that point in time, you're not driving truck anymore, and so you get the letter in the mail that says your thing's going to expire if you don't renew your certificate, and you figure, well, I'm not driving truck. So I don't need a medical. Well, that's true. Then they take your license away from you, right? You can submit this form and say, I'm exempt now. So if you get another job where you're not driving truck, and you get the letter that says your self-certification is about to expire, fine. Fill out a form, check exempt, send it in. And they'll allow you to maintain the CDL then forever. Now, you'll have to keep paying for it upon renewal, and that's another thing that people will do. You know, a Class A license, I think, is $38.50 to renew, and a Class D is $18, so $20. And some people will say, I don't want to spend the $20. Are you kidding me? As long as you stay healthy, maintain a good driving record. I'm 67 years old. I can get a job today driving a truck. Today. I can go make 70, 80 grand a year driving a truck at age 67. How many 67-year-old people can say that in this country? Computer technicians can't say that at age 67. Machinists, printers, aircraft mechanics. I mean, think of how many professions and occupations where once you're my age, nobody will hire you anymore. I can get a job as a truck driver in a heartbeat. Part of it is people my age are safe drivers, especially when I got a safe driving record. So I am sought after in the trucking industry. Brad, who was just here with Warner, he'd hire me in a heartbeat. Right? I'd be on a bus to Omaha this weekend if I told him I want to go to work for those guys. So I would suggest you keep if you're going to go through all the hassle to get your license, keep the doggone thing. Okay. All right. So let's close some of this stuff and. The rest of the material in your handout, you can just look over. The second page here talks about citizenship documents if you weren't born in the U.S. The third page talks about renewing the self-certification that I've just talked about. Fourth page talks about the requirements for a DOT physical. I'm not going to go over all that, which is, what else have I got open here? So I don't need that. Where did my that's still going. Okay. Let's go back to the manual. I believe All right, so I'm still streaming here, so that's good. So I'm going to go back to the online manual. Several years ago, in the middle 1980s, the feds made some changes. And when they made these changes, they required all of us that had a license at that point to pass a written test in order to keep our CDL. And there were a lot of people that were having a hard time passing the test. And so the feds went to AMVA. AMVA is American Association of Motor Vehicle Administrators. And they're actually the people that wrote this manual. This is a trade group. This is a trade group of states that belong to this. And this is how you and I can buy a car in Texas and bring it here and get a title. It's a clearinghouse between the states, American Association of Motor Vehicle Administrators. Well, this organization also wrote the manual, as you can see here, all right? And so the feds went to AMVA and said, look, we've got a lot of people that are struggling with this written test. Is there anything you can do to make it easier for people to prepare for and pass this test? And so what they did is they created these test your knowledge boxes in the manual. And so this is spread out throughout the manual, not at the end of any chapter, but within all of these sections. You have these test your knowledge sections. These are the questions on the test. Now, what I'm recommending that people do, read the manual. When you get to these test your knowledge questions, make sure you know what the answers are to those questions. In fact, the smart thing to do would be to go back, find that question, and highlight that answer. Now, this is one of the things where the online manual helps you do this. So, for example, if I copy and paste important reason into the manual, here it is. So section 1.1.1, why inspect? Safety is the most important reason. That's the answer to that question. All right. What things do you check during a trip? Well, gee, I don't know. There's a lot of things to check. Let's put it in the find box, and here's the correct. Oop, that's the question. Let's find out where it is in the text here. Come on, computer, work with me here. So that's whenever you stop. That's not what I'm looking for. That's cargo security. Here we go. Because see, this goes back in the same section as our question, in section 2. Those other two were in section 3 or something. So during a trip, watch gauges for signs of trouble. Use your senses to check for problems. That's the critical things that you check during the trip. All right? Watch gauges and use your senses. That's going to be the correct answer. So if we go back to test your knowledge again, it's still section 2. The key steering system parts on the third question isn't going to come up because that's actually in a diagram. But let's do suspension system defects. So let's find that in the manual. There it is. Suspension system defects. And there are the defects. Spring hangers that allow movement. Cracked or broken spring hangers. Missing or broken leaves in a leaf spring. If 1/4 or more are missing, it'll put it out of service, but any defect can be dangerous. Broken leaves in a multiple leaf spring or leaves that have shifted, so they might hit a tire or other part. Leaking shock absorbers. Torque arm or rod U-bolts. That's the correct answer to that question. And I suggest to you that the correct answer is going to be right there. Broken or missing leaves in any leaf spring. If 1/4 are missing, it puts it out of service. Right? So do you see how you can use this manual, the electronic online version, to find the answers to these questions? Minimum tread depth, that's real easy. Copy and paste that in there. And it finds every place where minimum tread depth comes up. Well, it's only finding one place. So if I just do tread depth, it'll find that in the manual here. It comes up 3 times, so here it is. There's the correct information about tread depth. Make sense? So I have a slide presentation we can do here that'll take us through this. So let me get this up. Takes a second for this slide to open up here. There we go. Just check where I'm at. All right. So here's these questions that we just did. Most important reason for doing a vehicle inspection, safety. So what I did is I copied and pasted these answers in. What things do you check during a trip? Gauges, use your senses. Name some key steering system parts. So there's a diagram on page 2.2 that shows you that. Steering wheel, tie rod, steering shaft, steering cylinder, steering arm, spindle, steering knuckle drag link, pitman arm, gearbox, hydraulic fluid reservoir. Name some suspension system defects. Well, that's what was on page 2.2 that I read a second ago. What 3 types of emergency equipment must you have? Any ideas what 3 types of emergency equipment we have to have?
Layers. I don't know.
Well, first off, fire extinguisher.
Well, yeah,
Fire extinguisher, okay. Fire extinguishers have to be properly rated, fully charged, and secured. Now, the proper rating for a fire extinguisher has to be a 5 VC. This is a 10, so this is twice what you need. This is actually what you need in hazmat vehicle. So a B is, the B rating is to fight flammable liquids. C is to fight electrical fires. You need a BC, a 5-pounder. Has to be fully charged. They're all going to have a gauge. Needle has to be in the green. You don't need a tag. Fire extinguishers in buildings need tags, but fire extinguishers in vehicles do not. And then properly secured. I learned that the hard way with a fire extinguisher I had underneath the seat of my pickup truck a while ago. Got out of my car in the garage at home and went, who barked on my shoe? My fire extinguisher barked on my shoe. That's what happened. Reflective triangles are required, and then spare fuses are required. Those are the 3 pieces of emergency equipment that you have to have with you. Okay. Now, what did that page say about minimum tread depth? What is it? 4 30-seconds for the front tires. How about rear tires? 2 30-seconds. And what about trailer tires? 2 30-seconds also. Okay. The tire industry measures tread depth in 30-seconds of an inch. So that's how you measure it. Bonus question, what kind of vehicle is not allowed to have recap tires on the front axle? Any idea? Buses. Passenger buses are not allowed to have a recap on the front. Now, us truck drivers don't put them on the front either because it's not the safest thing to do, but it is allowed. Name some things you should check on the front of your vehicle during a walk-around inspection. That's a very broad, open-ended question, but here's the correct answer. Look underneath the fluid vehicle for fresh oil, coolant, grease, or fuel leaks. What should wheel bearing seals be checked for? Leaking grease. How many triangles are you required to have? 3 of them, yes. Okay. How do you test hydraulic brakes for leaks? Any ideas? pump the brake pedal 3 times, and then hold the brake pedal for 5 seconds. You should not lose any pressure. Make sense? So push on the brake pedal 3 times, then hold for 5 seconds. The pedal should not move during that 5 seconds. Why put the starter switch key in your pocket during the pre-trip inspection? Well, so nobody drives off on you while you're underneath the vehicle. That's why. So that was the first 11 questions in the test your knowledge boxes. The next section is on page 10 of section 2. First question is there, why should you back towards the driver's side? So you can see better. If stopped on a hill, how can you start moving without rolling back? Well, with today's trucks, this really isn't a problem, but what the manual says is use your parking brake, or if you're driving a tractor trailer equipped with a trailer brake hand valve, use that. I don't do either one of these things. These trucks today with these diesel motors have so much torque to them. This is not a problem of any kind whatsoever. With a manual transmission, your foot on the brake pedal, just put the clutch in, put it in first gear. Let the clutch out a little bit so you feel it start to engage, and take your foot off the brake. Let the clutch out nice and smooth, off you'll go. This is not a 1972 Pinto that's going to buck, snort, and stall and die on you, okay? So don't worry about it. When backing, why is it important to use a helper? Why would that be important?
Do I have permission to write a check to 50?
If it eliminates blind spots, all right? It eliminates blind spots. What's the most important hand signal that you and the helper should agree on? Stop, okay? Then here's a bonus question. What do you do if you lose sight of your helper? Stop. Get out and look and find your helper, okay? If you lose sight of somebody that's assisting you, get out and look. What are 2 special conditions where you should downshift? Prior to going down a hill and prior to going around a curve. When should you downshift automatic transmissions? Well, the manual says before you start down a hill. Here, the manual is so much old school stuff. There are so many things that have changed since this manual was first written. With today's automatic transmissions, they're programmed to do that automatically. I have a little diesel in my pickup truck. I don't downshift that thing. It downshifts it by itself when I go down a hill. I'm going down a steep hill and the transmission starts downshifting all by itself. Same thing with the big trucks, right? But that's the correct answer before you start down the hill. Next question. Retarders keep you from skidding when the road is slippery. Is that true or false? Well, first of all, what is a retarder? A retarder is an engine brake. So if I say engine brake, Jake brake, or engine retarder, that's all the same thing. Let's look at what an engine retarder is by finding it in the manual and seeing what they say. Retarders. Some vehicles, not all, but some vehicles have retarders. Retarders help slow a vehicle, reducing the need for using your brakes. They reduce brake wear and give you another way to slow down. The next sentence is kind of stupid because they're all exhaust engine related, and some are hydraulic, and all of them have an electric component to it. So that's a stupid question or statement. But the next sentence is true. All retarders can be turned on or off by the driver. On some vehicles, the retarding power can be adjusted. They'll have a low, medium, and high, some a low and high. On some vehicles, the retarding can be adjusted. Okay, when turned on, retarders apply their braking power to the drive wheels only whenever you let up off the accelerator pedal all the way. So what's going on here is that we have an engine brake in here. There's a system that applies a braking force to the drive tires. Why is this an important component? And the reason for that is these trucks, 99% of these big trucks on the road still have drum brakes. Now, Jim, you're old enough, you started driving something with drum brakes, right? You sure haven't. You've probably never driven a vehicle with drum brakes in your life. All right? Drum brakes are not as reliable and they're not as safe. And that's why we need these engine brakes then. Because when you're going down a steep grade, if you rely strictly on these drum brakes, what can happen? They overheat, fade, and they stop working. Now, disc brakes are far superior, and disc brakes have been around in the trucking industry for, I'll bet you, at least 12 years, if not longer. But the industry has not adapted them. The industry has not gone out and ordered trucks and trailers with disc brakes. You can get them. You can get them on trucks, you can get them on trailers. But for whatever reason, this industry just does not embrace this new technology. It's stupid, but it is what it is. So that's why we're using engine brakes. Now, anytime you go down a steep grade that would cause the vehicle to increase speed, the engine brake is your first source of keeping speed in check or reducing speed. So you always downshift at the top and use your engine brake going down any grade. Okay? Now, if with the downshift and with the engine brake, if the speed rises, there is a formula for how you're supposed to use the brake pedal on a grade. Anybody know what the formula is? Use the brake pedal. Here's what you do. You start down the hill 5 miles an hour slower than what your target speed is. So let's say that the hill is marked at 35 mile an hour top speed for trucks. That means you start down the hill at 30, downshifted engine braking. So you're starting down this hill. If this, with the engine brake on and downshifted, if the speed rises up to 35, then use the brake pedal for 3 seconds and reduce speed by 5 miles an hour, which means you got to push on that brake pedal pretty firmly. You're going to have to nail that brake pedal pretty good, right? Get her woed down in 3 seconds, get her woed down to that 5 miles an hour, then let go again. Why not just use the brake pedal all the way down the hill and maintain a constant speed? Because they'll overheat, fade, and fail. So we don't want to use the brakes continuously. We're better off using them intermittently, getting off of them. Getting off the brakes allow them to cool down. All right? So that's how you use your brake pedal when going down a grade. But the engine brake is to be used before you do that. Okay? Now, the next sentence here says, because these devices can be noisy, be sure you know where their use is permitted. You've seen the signs, haven't you? Where engine braking prohibited or jake brakes prohibited or whatever. That's a noise issue. And the problem is there are some drivers that are running around out there with trucks with open exhaust. And with open exhaust, when you hit the engine brake, it causes a big rattling noise. And so Aunt Bertha, that lives close to the highway, doesn't like it when her fine china rattles off the shelf in the kitchen. So she went to the city council and complained a hissy fit. And so the city council enacted a city statute that says no engine braking. Now, a no engine braking statute would never stand up in a court with the reasonable argument, but the noise ordinance statutes will stand up for sure. If you have a truck with an original equipment exhaust system, you'll never have a problem making too much noise. It is the are the trucks that have the open exhaust that's the problem. So if you've got a truck with a regular exhaust system, you won't have any problem. Go ahead and use it. And I would hope you're not going to drive a truck with open exhaust and make all kinds of noise. I hear them at my house because I'm above a highway, and it's a pain in the butt to listen to it sometimes. It's nothing compared to the Harleys, but anyway. But that's what the noise issue is all about. The next sentence here, caution. When your drive wheels have poor traction, the retarder may cause them to skid. Therefore, you should turn the retarder off whenever the road is wet, icy, or snow covered. So, when you're going down a hill and it's slippery, you shouldn't use the engine brake. Now, I just told you, you're supposed to use the engine brake as the primary source of slowing down on a hill. So how do you deal with that then? Well, first off, I don't think wet is an issue. If I was bobtailing, if I was running around with no trailer on, that you don't have much traction there at all. So I'd be pretty careful, and I probably wouldn't use my engine brake, but I don't have enough weight to push me around anyway, so why would I use the engine brake? So wet is not an issue. If I had a trailer on, I'm going down a hill and it's wet, raining, I'd probably use my engine brake. I don't see any problem with that. I should have enough traction where that's not a problem. But if it is snowy or icy, now we've got a problem. Here's the solution. How do you deal with a hill, with going down a hill with a large vehicle and it's slippery? You don't. You don't go down the hill. Okay? I don't understand drivers that keep pushing through these precarious conditions. If the roads are slippery enough that people are going to spin out and lose control, why would you keep driving? Now, you might say to yourself, well, I'm under control. Fine. But Aunt Bertha that we were just talking about, is she going to stay under control? The 16-year-old kid that just started driving, is he going to stay under control? And so now the road's blocked, and you're a truck driver. What have you done for yourself? What have you accomplished? Because now you're sitting, stopped in the middle of a road because other people have spun out. You're Minnesotans. You see this constantly, right? Now, the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Regulations specifically say that during adverse conditions caused by a variety of things, ice, snow, sleet, any of that, when it adversely affects driving conditions, you're supposed to slow down, and if necessary, the rules say you should stop. You should get off the road and stop. It says it right in the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Regulations. And the feds also give us guidance on these regulations, and the guidance on that rule specifically says the decision to determine whether you continue or stop is the driver's, not management. It is not your supervisor's decision. It is your decision by rule. Couple that with the Federal Whistleblower Protection Law, which says that if any employer retaliates against you for complying with the federal rules, you got the basis for a federal whistleblower lawsuit. And there's been a ton of those won by drivers over the years. Bottom line, go to work for a decent carrier. It's not an issue. A decent carrier is not going to push you to drive when the weather conditions are bad. The fly-by-night outfits that are operating on a wing and a prayer and don't have any money in the bank, they're the ones that are going to take the risk and tell you to keep pushing when it's snowing. I'm pulling off the road. I'm stopping. Okay, that's the smart thing to do. So that's how you deal with hills when it's slippery. Here at Interstate Truck Driving School, we've operated nearly 20 years. It'll be 20 years this coming March 7th. Not one insurance claim due to a collision. Not one DOT reportable collision in that nearly 20 years. How proud of that do you suppose I am? Or darn proud of it. We have policies and procedures here in place to keep things safe. Our safe driving record's no accident. And the policy here is when it's snowy, like the other day, then the rule is stay on level ground. So I let my trucks go out and drive around on level ground here in South St. Paul. They can do that if they want. But no hills. And if it starts freezing drizzle, then what? Pull them off the road. The road test, the exam station is not well plowed. We had a student that was taking the test today and failed his test because the area for the backing was so slippery, he couldn't get any traction to back into the parking space, and they failed him. They apparently haven't heard of salt or sand, okay? And here again is another example of the apathetic attitude the state of Minnesota has towards people. That shouldn't be a fail in my mind. I mean, should that be a reason to fail a test? The road's too slippery? How about your test is suspended because we can't complete it with the improper road conditions. So let's do it again a different day. But they failed him for it, which is just so unfair. It is what it is. Nothing we can do about it. All right, we got time for a couple more of these test questions here. What are the two ways to know when to shift? Well, according to the manual, engine speed and road speed. Next, how far ahead does the manual say you're supposed to look? Now, ask me how far I'm supposed to look down the road. You know what my answer is going to be? far as I can see. Well, what's the correct answer according to these dudes? 12 to 15 seconds. That's the correct answer. So the correct answer comes out of the manual, people. I don't care how far you would look. I don't care what you would do. That's what the manual says you do. That's what you say on the test. What are the two main things to look for ahead? Two? Two? Come on, two? But according to them, traffic and signs or signals. You know, I might add in hills and curves and bridges and a whole bunch of other things, but nope, traffic and signs and signals. And it's actually three things. Okay. What's the most important way to see the sides and rear? Mirrors. What does communicating mean? Signaling. All right, how about this? The reflective triangles that we mentioned a minute ago. If you stop on a divided highway, where are your three reflective triangles supposed to be placed?
I just remember 10, 10, and 100.
10, 100, and 200 behind you. 10, 100, and 200. What if it's a two-way road? 10 feet in front, 100 feet in front, 10 behind, and another 100 behind. What if there's a curve or hill? Up to 500 feet. All right. What three things add up to total stopping distance? Perception distance, reaction distance, and braking distance. Now, if you've read the section on air brakes, you will have read about something called brake lag. And that's not what they're asking with this question. They're asking for three. So if they're asking for three, these are the three. Brake lag would be a fourth. So if the question asks for three, there's the correct answer. Forget brake lag unless you're asked for four issues that add up to total stopping distance. If you go twice as fast, will your stopping distance increase by 2 or 4 times? 4 times. Empty trucks have the best braking. Is that true or false? That's false. You know, as I mentioned to you a minute ago, when we are bobtailing, that's what we call it when there's no trailer. Boy, you have very, very little traction when you're bobtailing. You got to be very, very careful when you're running around empty like that. Okay? A heavily loaded truck will plow through snowbanks, and an empty truck will get stuck on a level ground. It's just a night and day difference. What is hydroplaning? Well, you're all Minnesotans. You know what that is. And then what's black ice? You all know what that is too, right? All right. Okay, so let's do this. Let's go. Yes, question.
Are these multiple choice tests?
Multiple guess or true false. All right. Let's go to our website and go to resources, and we're going to take this practice permit test. Now, how many questions did I tell you a Class A would be? 100 questions. If we go to the Class A Part 1 on cdltest.co, it is a 100 question quiz. So that's good. Question number 1. What should you do before you drive if you are drowsy? Get some sleep. Figure that one out. Excuse me. All right, we had this question right from the get-go. What's the most important reason for doing a pre-trip inspection? Safety. Pressing and releasing the brake pedal unnecessarily can let air out faster than the compressor can replace it. We haven't got to that question, but that is true. When backing, why is it important to use a helper?
Blind spot.
Blind spots. Which one has blind spots? The last one. That's the correct answer. See how it comes right out of the manual? And do you see how accurate these questions are based on what we were just reading? We didn't get to this question. Shut-off valves can be found at the front and back of each trailer. Nope. How do you avoid effects that wet brakes can cause? See, now this goes back to the drum brakes. Wet brakes the moisture does not affect disc brakes much at all, but it definitely affects drum brakes. So how can you avoid the effects that wet brakes can cause? Well, slowing down, well, that would help you. Gently putting on the brakes. This presses linings against the brake drums or discs, keeps them mud, silt, sand, and water from getting in. Well, that could help, yeah. Transmission low gear. Well, that's slowing down. That's the same thing as number one. I suppose that'll help. Increase engine RPM across the water while keeping light pressure in the brake pedal. That's actually a good idea. When out of the water, maintain light pressure on the brakes for a short distance, heat them up, and dry them out. That's the best idea yet. So you know what? I'm going to say all of the above. And that's correct. Now, if you have a question and you're not sure, you could use the question to learn the correct answer. So if I use the first one, it tells me, nope, wrong answer. I can then go back and choose something else and try that. Oh, still wrong answer. I can go back and try something else. So this is another way that you could study. I'd suggest reading the manual as a better way to do it. But you can go back and forth with your questions to find the correct answer. We had this one, didn't we? Retarders keep you from skidding when the road is slippery. True or false? False. They actually cause skidding. They don't keep you from skidding. What two things are most important to prevent a rollover? Evenly loaded trailer, properly inflated tires. Well, that's important, but are they the most important thing? Second one, keeping the cargo as close to the ground as possible and driving slowly around turns. Well, that's pretty darn important. Weight and length of the vehicle. Well, factors into it, but it's not the most important. Keeping the cargo's center of gravity as high as possible. Now, that's for sure wrong. So I wouldn't say it's none of the above. I'd say the best one is going to be keeping the cargo as close to the ground as possible. And that's the correct answer. Okay. We had this question, didn't we?
Yeah.
So what's the answer?
4.
4 times. What 4 things related to cargo are drivers responsible? I'd say it's the first one. Inspecting the cargo, recognizing overloads, properly securing the cargo, and making sure the cargo does not restrict emergency equipment. I'm going to go with that one. Combination vehicles and the rearward amplification each trailer has after a quick lane change is referred to what? They call it the crack the whip effect. Okay. The braking effect of an engine on a long, steep downgrade should be used to supplement the use of the brakes. True or false? What was I telling you about the engine when you're going down a hill?
Well, the new ones kind of slow themselves down.
Okay, but what do you do first? The brakes or the
Downshift.
your downshift? Use your engine brakes. So this question says the braking effect of the engine on a long steep downgrade should only be used as a supplement to use of the brakes. True or false?
False.
False. It's the other way around. That should be the primary thing that you do, is downshift and engine brake. Letting up on the brake pedal increases air pressure and releases the brakes. Well, letting up on the brake pedal releases the brakes, but it doesn't increase air pressure. That's a bleeping trick question, okay? I don't like that sucker, because half of it's true, but half of it's false, so gotta go with false. Fill out your free CDL training information application today. Don't do that. because then you're going to get inundated with calls from Swift and other people trying to hire you. So just keep taking the test without signing up for anything. What does an alcohol evaporator help prevent? Does it prevent water leaks? Nope. Does it prevent air in the system? No. Dirt? No. Prevents air from leaking? No. It's none of the above. So what does an alcohol evaporator prevent? Anybody know?
Ice.
Ice and freezing in your air system. Because the alcohol doesn't freeze. The safety relief valve protects the air tanks and the rest of the system from building too much pressure. That's true. That's to prevent a catastrophic failure with too much air pressure. All right, we had this one, didn't we? Where should your reflectors be placed when stopping on a divided highway? The third one, 10 feet, 100, and 200. Okay? What would happen if the trailer is too high when you try to couple? It may not couple correctly, the kingpin may fall off, the trailer may tip over, all the above. Kingpin's not going to fall off and it's not going to tip over. Okay. Combination vehicles are usually lighter, shorter, and require less driving skill than single commercial motor vehicles. False. Just got to read the question. If the front trailer shutoff valves closed, if the front trailer shutoff valves are closed, they missed a word there, and the rear trailer shutoff valves are open, you will hear air flowing out of the rear trailer shutoff valves. No, you won't, because the front one's closed. So how would you hear air flowing if the front one is closed? What's a pull-up? Pulling forward while backing a trailer to reposition it is the correct answer. See, they want me to sign up again. Don't do it. All vehicles with air brakes must have a low air pressure warning signal. That is true. Here's a question that I got wrong the first time I took it because I didn't think it all the way through. You should use low beams whenever you can. True or false? That's false. You should use high beams whenever you can. Now, you use low beams 99% of the time, but if there's nobody coming the other way, you should use the high beams. I got that one wrong first time I took it because I just kind of jumped to a conclusion. All right, one last question. Name some important steering system parts. Which one?
B.
The second one. Tie rod, spindle, and pitman arm. You've got to be able to recognize that stuff based on the manual, right? Okay. So cdltest.co is your practice permit test website. The rules that I operate under as a licensed school, I'm actually prohibited from doing that, but I can certainly advise you of a website that's not put out by us. So I would suggest you do that. Study the sections in the manual. Make sure you know the answers to the test your knowledge questions. All right, any questions?
So the general knowledge, so that would be section 1, 2, and 3, and then
Well, 1 and 2.
1 and 2.
General knowledge is sections 1 and 2.
Okay.
And remember, section 2 is huge.
Yeah, it is.
It is bigger than any other section in the manual.
Okay.
And it's, you know, that's something kind of interesting. If we look at that real quick here. If you look at the topics that are discussed in section 2, it's a very wide range of things, including hazmat. There's hazmat stuff in there. There's stuff about buses in there. I mean, it's a huge, huge section of the manual. If we just go back to the, if we look at the index of what's in this thing, just to blow up here. Come on, work for me. All right, don't. There we go. My computer's a little slower than my fingers, I guess. But vehicle inspection, basic control, shifting, seeing, communicating, space management, controlling your speed, seeing hazards, distracted driving, aggressive night driving, driving in fog, winter, hot weather, mountains, railroads, driving emergency, analog brakes, skid control, exit procedure, fire, alcohol, staying alert, hazmat. I mean, it's a huge, huge, huge section, and that's why there's 50 questions. So that's the one that takes the most time to prepare for. And remember, it's 3 hours and 15 minutes on the audio file. Big, big section.
Didn't you say the written was, they only have 2 versions of that one?
Well, that was my understanding,
Okay. That's what
but I haven't taken the written one in a good long while. So if that's
I know,
changed, I don't know about it.
I think the computer one had like a pool over 200 questions, so
Right.
each time you do the general knowledge test on that, you get different questions.
You get not only do you get different questions in the computer, but you can also get the same question, but the answers are mixed up.
True.
So, and that'll confuse people. It's the same question you had a minute ago, but now the answers are in a different sequence. So that can mess people up too. All right. Any other questions? All right. Thanks for coming. Have a great day. More important, have a safe day.